Hey, Doug and Pat here with another episode of the Wealthy Gym Owners. And today we're going to talk about hiring A players, even if you're in a small market or a tough labor market. So, Doug, I mean, you're kind of in that hiring mode right now. You are just off the heels of getting gym number two up, running, profitable. And now you are in pre-sale for gym number three. So you are certainly neck deep in finding A players. So I think this is a great topic. I'd love for you to unpack it.
Yeah. So the first thing I will say is I think especially in this market, the always be hiring is probably the bit. If you take away one thing, would be like, are we dumping hundreds of dollars on Indeed every month? No, but we're always having our eyes and ears open for somebody that could be a good fit. And I know that's not really like a tactical answer, but just from a mindset of an owner, I always want to be looking and keeping an eye out for people that would be a good fit. So that's certainly just an overarching thought. The first thing I wanted to do was kind of really break down like the A player. And this is something I've been spending a lot of time with Josh, my partner on the gym side, on of like who are our A players and what does an A player look like in our organization? Because the general premise is like A players are your rock stars. They don't need a ton of like pushing. They just often need a little bit of direction and then they go off and crush it. And the B players are like probably most employees. They're really good. They're solid. They just need a lot of direction, a lot of hand holding. And then C players are either that employee that you got to get rid of or you got to level up to at least a B player. And those are the people that you're constantly having to remind them to do things. They're missing quality. They're maybe asking for a lot of time off, right? They're the pain in the butt, right? And so those employees, just as we kind of, and I do think it's important to always have pulse with that scale of where your current team is. But looking at it from a hiring perspective, how do we go and find the A players? And that is, there's no exact blueprint that we found, or I don't even think exists out there to find an A player. But the first thing I will say is that they are typically more expensive, and that is something that we have to really wrap our head around because more expensive is not necessarily like substantially. It's not like they going from say $22 an hour to $50 an hour, right? It's the difference between $22 an hour and $26 an hour, right? It's the difference between this is my entry level and I can also get the same pay at McDonald's, or I can make a decent living and have an apartment and not have to worry about paying for my food. That's the difference between $22 an hour and $26 an hour. So I would start with that and say, don't be stepping over dollars to pick up pennies when we're arguing over can we pay them a dollar difference? Because sometimes that is the difference between an A player and a B player.
Yeah, and it to be fair, it's probably pretty short-sighted because you're going to have more turnover, you're going to have more frustration that you're going to end up spending substantially more than the $4 an hour that you would have invested here on the front end. So definitely worth paying a little bit more to get the right person through the door.
Yeah, for sure. And the next question is like, how do you find these people, right? So what has worked for us and continues to work for a lot of our clients that are building teams, at least in this marketplace, is to cast a pretty wide net and not have a ton of criteria for their training background. Because in my experience, a lot of A players are not rock star, super qualified trainers, right? Because if we put ourselves in their shoes, if I'm a really good trainer, I'm, let's say, good at building my own book, i.e., selling, I'm probably not looking for a job. I probably have a full book of business, or I'm going to go do it on my own or whatever. So if I'm looking for the most educated or the most qualified or the most experienced, that person exists, but they're probably not in the marketplace for a job. And even if they are, fitting into our model is going to be pretty challenging because you're going to have to ask them to do things drastically different. We would much rather cast a net for somebody who is hungry, motivated, maybe doesn't even have a fitness background. The A player is less about the knowledge base of training and more about the personality traits, right? Are they high integrity? Are they loyal? Do they have a good attention to detail? Are they a great team player? Those are the things that I'm kind of screening for versus do you know how to coach this exercise?
Yeah, I think that we recognized that way back in my first training business because the people with the deepest resume in training kind of had their heels dug in on how they wanted to train. In many cases, were very much enamored with their list of acronyms behind their name, but less enamored with client service, personal relationship, being prompt, the things that frankly are the hardest to teach, right? Like, I mean, we want to be able to improve whoever we're bringing through the door, and honestly, it's a whole lot easier to steer them towards the education that you believe in, to teach them your training system, and build around the intangibles, the personality traits, the values, than it is to install personality traits and values in someone.
For sure, for sure. So when I say cast a wide net, just to share some tactics, what that currently looks like is certainly like low hanging fruit is going to be getting it out to the network. So that's going to be things like obviously posting on social, getting anybody in your professional network to share it to see if they know that somebody's a good fit. We really like this is where there's several reasons why we're fans of the Chamber of Commerce, but we always let our local chamber know that we're hiring because they might have somebody that friend of a friend or heard of somebody looking for something, new opportunity, whatever. And then I'm always shocked when I find out that gym owners don't do this. I always like the literally one of the first things we do is we tell our clients that, hey, we're growing, we're looking for somebody. If you know anybody that's a good fit, here we typically drive people to like a landing page that is essentially just like if you're attracting a client, you're going to talk about the benefits and then you're going to have a small opt-in name, email, phone number. That's we market to team the same way, right? Put a little page together that talks about who you're looking for and then a little opt-in and then you follow up from there. And that centralizes for you, that centralizes, you're getting the word out all these different places. But if you can give everybody the same link, like yourwebsite.com/jobs, it's easy enough to have one central spot to drive everybody that's interested to. But a lot of our hires have simply come from not necessarily, we've had one or two clients themselves express interest, but most commonly is the client's sister's son is graduating from university, things like that. So just letting your clients know is not a guarantee, but certainly low hanging fruit.
And if you are in the athlete training market, always going back to former clients is such an easy path. I've seen that time and time again with people that we've coached, franchises we run, and I see it in the places that I frequent now. So yeah, it's sometimes we jump right over the people right in front of us, and those are our best sources.
Yep, for sure. So those I would say are like the organic kind of more grassroots way to find somebody. We still do in most markets recommend paying to have a placement on Indeed. Indeed, as of this recording, is the preferred platform. And we typically have a lot of our gym owners that will spend 10, 20 bucks a day just during that hiring period. We have one gym owner, I really like this strategy. He has, because in any of these platforms, whether we're talking Meta on marketing side or Indeed with the job hiring side, it is very much a pay to play, right? You can put your free stuff out there, but we all know that that's very rarely going to be seen. And so we have one gym owner that just like clockwork spends $5 a day for his Indeed ad just to make sure, even if he's not hiring, right? 365 days a year, $5 a day, just to have it out in the marketplace. And then when you are actively hiring and you do need that role in the next 6 to 8 weeks, that is where you can dial up the budget and kind of pay to have that seen with more eyeballs.
Yeah, the Indeed piece of this is really picked up, and I've seen it be more and more successful over the past few years. So, all right, so you've talked about personal network, you talked about Chamber of Commerce, you talked about Indeed, and then everything driving back to a page. What about things like university, internship relationships, anything like that?
Yeah. So if you have those close by, I certainly think university connections are phenomenal because they have their alumni, plus obviously their graduating class that are interested. So certainly letting them know that you're hiring. And again, you can use that same link to drive them to and at least have that conversation. Internships are, I have a fairly strong opinion of internships that it's a lot of work, right? So I'm not like downplaying an internship, and I know that's a great idea. And this is coming from someone where for years we had 5 or 6 interns every semester, like clockwork. I mean, well north of 100 interns through our flagship location. But you got to put a curriculum together. You don't just throw them out on the floor and then 6 weeks later, 12 weeks later, they're a great coach. So it is a commitment. Not saying it's not worth it, right? Because it can be, we have plenty of clients that it's a great feeder system, of course, where you can put them in the internship. Then as soon as they graduate or as soon as they're done the internship, if you are in a stage of hiring, you have a great person that kind of passed the test to be a good team member. And of course, over time, you build up an alumni list of all former interns so that you can reach out to them. So I'm all for it. I would just say, be prepared that it's hard in anything in this business to put hours to, but to measure. But it's a commitment to build out the curriculum and to attract and onboard and keep interns trained up.
So we've got varied lead sources. We've got the ability to leverage the channels available to us. So let's say we are getting some leads through the door. What happens next?
So I think this is the hardest part, right? Because I think getting applicants is, again, I hate to say easy, but there's a playbook for that, right? Like I just shared 90% of the playbook, right? The playbook's there to find leads. And it's a lot of it, it's marketing, right? And so just like your meta advertising, not every lead is going to respond, not every lead is going to come in the door. We're crushing it if 20% of your leads come through the door. And it's the same thing with hiring. So your goal is to cast that wide net. And then what we like to do is every lead that comes in, every applicant that comes in, they get a text from us that says, "Thanks for applying. I have this time and this time available for a quick phone interview. Which one works better for you?" And you will be shocked that the amount of people that don't respond to that. So that weeds them out, right? So you just start crossing them out. If they don't respond, cross them out, move on to the next person. I don't make judgment, and this is just personal opinion and what we've seen work across our coaching programs. Like I don't frankly look a ton at anything until their phone interview. Like I don't look at their history, their background, or whatever. I just send them that text, and if they respond with a time, I'll gladly spend 10 minutes on the phone with them. And that phone call is really where you can tell, are they potentially an A player or not? Because things like A, did they respond promptly and book a call? Did they call you at the time they said they were going to call you at? And then when you're on the phone with these people, let's say you get 25 applicants. In our experience, you're going to probably do 10 or 15 phone calls. About half of them are actually going to get on the phone with you. And of those phone calls, you're going to pick up on certain things. You're going to pick up on, why did you apply? And if it's not like, if there's no meaning behind why they applied, they're usually not an A player. Like if they're doing it just because of money, or they're doing it just because of, like, we had some applicants that were like, "I applied because your job is morning only, and I'm so excited that I don't have to work in the afternoon." Although that's a benefit, like, don't get me wrong, that's a benefit to our model. Yes, you won't have to work in the afternoon. If that's the reason you applied and not, "I want to help people, I want to change lives, I want to grow this business with you," like it very much want to know the reason why. And then of course, am I weighing in past experiences? Of course, right? But I will tell you, the experiences that we prefer from A players are either sales background or hospitality backgrounds. Like we hit on earlier, training background is bonus. If they hit training and sales and hospitality, great. But 9 out of 10 times, I would take the I don't have much of training experience, but I was a bartender in college, or I worked at the front desk of a hotel, or I was the dining room manager at this restaurant, and now I have a huge passion for fitness. I would take that over the degreed and certified individual.
Yeah. So you've got kind of your filtering mechanism. Like, let's just kind of go through the process because honestly, it's so much like or very similar to the process we get. We generate leads, we try to get them through the front door. We have some sort of consultative sales environment. So just continue to take us through that process.
So from those phone interviews, you've used your judgment through those conversations. Some of them, again, don't call. They say, "Hey, Wednesday at 10," and then Wednesday at 10 comes around and your phone doesn't ring. So people are going to weed themselves out. But let's say, for example, you end up having conversations with 10 people. Inevitably, 6 or 8 of them are not going to be the kind of conversation that you had hoped for, right? Maybe their energy was not where you wanted it to be. Maybe what they said you didn't jive with. You can honestly, there's a lot of just like gut feel when you have that initial phone call. So the next step is to bring, let's say you got it down to 3 people. You're going to invite those 3 people in to the gym to check it out. Now, our personal strategy is not to do a formal interview, but to just bring them in when a session is going on. So I would ideally prefer that it's a time where you are not coaching so that you can kind of be with them, but maybe your part-time coach or somebody else on your team is training so that they're walking into the gym not at 1 o'clock in the afternoon when there's nothing going on, but they're walking into the gym at 9 a.m. or 5 p.m. when they can actually see what they are going to be delivering. Because that I think it's really hard to explain to a coach what their job is going to look like, especially if they've never coached in your model or they're just at first time coaching. And so it's less again about teaching them how to coach the exercises and more just about, is this the environment they want to be in for 3 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours a day, right? And so they'll kind of weed themselves out, honestly, is we've had people show up to that and then not reach back out to us because they clearly said, ooh, this is not a good fit. But what we're measuring or what we're observing during that time in person is casual conversation, but you've hopefully picked up a lot of that on the phone call. I want to see how they interact on the floor. Are they standing in the corner with their arms crossed and not wanting to interact? Or are they going around and introducing themselves to clients? If there's another team member there, are they chatting it up with the team member? Are they asking questions? That to me is a good sign of an A player. And I think there's a happy medium there is the last thing I would say with that stage. We've had both extremes. We've had I'm just going to stand there and be a tree and not move. And that's probably not going to be a great coach. We've also had the other extreme, which is you come in guns blazing and start coaching and correcting clients that you've never met before. And that's not a great first impression because that person, although confident, usually lacks humility in our experience and usually has too big of an ego to know how to kind of read the room and read the client. So we're looking for that happy medium where they're interested, they're engaged, they're asking questions, but they also know that they're still on interview. They're not a coach on the team yet.
So, all right, you get this kind of tryout, if you will, right? What's next?
So at that point, I like if I do have a team, I'm going to go to the team and have them share any opinions. I think that's really important. If you have some of you listening to this, you have 2, 3, 4, 5 other team members, and if your goal is to be off the training floor, this person is going to be working with them more than anything else. And so I do like, and we have a perfect case study of this. We had a client, an applicant, a coach that applied that we thought was solid. And one of our coaches, long tenured coaches, came up to us after the fact and said, "Yeah, there's something off about him. I just don't think he's a good fit." And we listened to it, but we ended up going with our decision, which was he's a good fit, whatever. We'll kind of look past that coach's opinion of him. And very quickly, we learned as soon as we brought this coach on that he was an absolute nightmare, right? Behavioral issues, punctuality issues. And in hindsight, we should have listened to our tenured coach because he clearly saw something that we didn't. So I think it's important to just do a quick scan if you do have a current team. Hey, what'd you think of that person? Do you see them as a good fit? And certainly it's your business, your decision, but certainly take that into consideration. At that point, it's offer, right? Send them the offer. Again, be very clear with what the role is. Hopefully they accept the offer, and then you move on to onboarding. I will say anybody that came in person, make sure that you close that loop with them. We have had several scenarios over the years where, let's say you got it down to 2 people and you're having a tough time decide and you end up going with person 1. Close that loop with person 2 with a moment of gratitude that they took the time to come in and observe, because we have had scenarios where person 1 took the job and then in that gap backed out, and now we go back to person 2. And I think if you never close that gap, if you never kind of close that communication loop, it can be a little bit salty, and you're less likely to have a strong chance of going back to that person.
So, I mean, I think that's a terrific process, and really the only kind of thing that I think we hear pretty regularly that you didn't dig into is, how long do we expect people to actually stick around as team members if we have a single location? So there's not this, hey, you can ascend and go be the manager over at this other spot. What have you found to be a realistic expectation of how long a trainer or coach may stick around?
Yeah, it's a great question, and certainly something that can be humbling for people, myself included. 18 to 24 months. I think 2 years is like the sweet spot, because it's going to take, let's call it 6 months to become a really good coach in your ecosystem, right? And then they're going to have a year of like doing the job, and then a good person, like a good A player, is going to want to level up. If they don't want to level up, that's probably a sign that they're not an A player. And so it goes back to the first comment I made on this episode, which is always be hiring, because eventually an A player is going to graduate. And obviously you can promote them to what's very common in our industry, where you build a coaching team, you are the head coach, and then you usually typically revenue marks around 40 to 60K in monthly revenue. You get to a point where you can have your A player be the head coach, and they're the one kind of leading the team. That's really it, right? For a single location. So if they're an A player, they're going to move on, and that's okay. We just have to be able to be very comfortable with the hiring process to always be hiring.
Of all the things that have evolved so much in this industry in the couple decades that I've been around this, everybody does recurring billing now. Small group is the preeminent model. I mean, franchising has exploded. I remember Alan Cosgrove and I did a product in early 2007, and 2 years was the goal then. It's one of the few things that it's just not changed much. And it's just the constraint of being a single site small business. So you can build around that and have that kind of pipeline full, and always be hiring. That's the way that we solve that issue.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, I think just thinking in those 2-year cycles is a great way to think about this, right? Just like we expect hopefully a client to stay 2 years, maybe 3. If we build that in as an expectation, now you're not surprised when they come to you and say, "Hey, I got to move on." You're essentially, anything after that's a blessing, and so, but you're always ready to backfill.
Yeah. So, well, another great episode, and a really pertinent episode, because most of the people watching what we're doing or listening in, hiring's a pretty important part of their operation. Either it's something they're just moving into now, or it's something they're dealing with on a very regular basis. So I appreciate you doing a deep dive into that. And that's another episode of the Wealthy Gym Owners.